The Rough Drafts podcast is sponsored by Unicorn.com, the world's premier esport betting site. Log on today to bet on all your favorite esports titles at the simple click of a button. Choose your game, choose your team, earn unicoins, and who knows, maybe you'll earn enough to enter to win any number of fabulous prizes, such as Logitech peripherals or CSGO skins in their marketplace. Unicorn.com. Log on today.
Welcome back, Internet. This is part 2 of our 2-part series on the quarterfinals recap / semifinals preview of our podcast. This is our live stream, of course, twitch.tv / Rough Drafts podcast. It's all presented by Slingshot Esports, and we are combining two lovely things for you lovely listeners into one, and that is our preview of the next series, just like we did last week, where we talked about these the quarterfinals and what we thought was going to happen in those series. But we're also going to be guessing the lines. That's right, our Guess the Lines challenge is here.
Hey, Lamau.
I actually get to see what the little setup you have looks like as we go through.
Oh, see, I changed it for this week because there's only 2 games, so.
That's fair. It looks like you have Samsung versus H2K on my screen right now.
Yeah, I just swapped it back over because I forgot that we were starting with Rox versus SKT. So
yeah, we got to start at the beginning, and it's a shame because this is the series I think that everyone has been waiting for. It is the rematch from last year's World Finals. It is the most anticipated series that any of us could have hoped for, because this was the criticism, this was the asterisk that held over ROX Tigers for the entirety of the summers, that, they won, but they never played SKT now, did they? And then it was, well, look, they dropped a game to Albus Nox Luna. Clearly, they're the worst team to ever win Korea. And now everyone in Korea has dropped that because they went on to go smash EDG. But it does bring up this whole idea of 2 powerhouses. One powerhouse that is, this SKT, definitive part of the scene, a team that has been dominant since season 3, that has 2 world championships under their belt, the only organization that has ever won more than 1 world championship, with some of the same guys on these rosters. Faker is, could be a 3-time world champion if things go his way this year. And meanwhile, ROX Tigers, the underdog story, the team that everyone with a soul, you have to look at them and go, but, they've been through so much hell just trying to find sponsors, despite the fact that the team is filled with such talented players. They have come this close time and time and time again to beating SKT, and they just can't quite find the key that unlocks the door.
I guess I don't have a soul.
You're rooting for SKT here?
I'm rooting for SKT, of course.
Do you root for the Empire in Star Wars 2 out of curiosity? Is that where you're at?
Star Wars 2, there is no Empire.
As in TOO, as in also.
Oh, as in also?
Yes.
I mean,
the prequels never happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
The prequels never happened. I mean, I always like a bad guy. Like, I'm kind of a bad guy fan. My name comes from a Sith Lord, for God's sakes. Like,
that is true. I wonder how many people realize that. Like, we've been, Walter Ciades Fedchuk has been brought up 1,000 times, and yet I've never heard anyone on Twitter make a Sith joke to you. And I feel like that should have happened by now.
A few people, like, in game have been like, oh, is your name modeled after this? I'm like, yeah, it is. I'm like, that's so cool. Someone get it. I'll tell the story in the Q&A. I'll tell you guys the story in the Q&A.
It'll be great.
But yeah, no, I'm personally rooting for SKT. Like, yeah, the ROX Tigers story is a good one. They keep stumbling against SKT. They can't quite figure it out. They replace their jungler. They're one weak link with this young gun Peanut. I love everything about, like, the personality of the team and all that jazz. Mm-hmm. But we got to bring up the elephant in the room about ROX Tigers, whether people want to believe it, whether people
are we going
want
here?
to acknowledge it,
Oh,
whether
boy.
people want to accept it as fact or merely as speculation. There is a rumor and a story has come out via Jacob Wolf at ESPN that
Everyone's favorite reporter, as I think we
mean,
can all agree.
hey, whatever. I don't care.
Friend of the podcast, for the
Friend of the podcast, Jacob Wolf. He's appeared on this podcast before, actually. He has.
A couple times.
Before he was at ESPN.
Bring him back one day.
Yeah. But he published a report that sources say that the Rocks Tigers will be disbanding after Worlds. Now, this has been refuted by the organization multiple ways. This has been refuted by Susie, by Monty, by a bunch of people in the Korean kind of know.
To be clear, if I remember the exact thing that Susie phrased it, because both Susie and Monte Cristo have been very clear, that what they said was, these are rumors and I told you not to go publish them yet. Like, I told you this was a bad idea. That's not to say that they're untrue. It's just, it was a bad idea to do this now. And to be fair, it is a bad idea to do this now. This is something that, like, we're still in the middle of the World Championships. We should not be thinking about what's going to be happening in the offseason. Let's focus on Worlds for the next 2 weeks, guys. And second of all, if they win a championship, how many championship teams look at each other and say, you know what? We just won. We are the defending guys. But screw it. We're going to give up that mantle. It just doesn't happen. There's so many things that can change between now and then. Those variables.
Samsung.
Yeah, but Samsung got bought out by China, and maybe Rocks Tigers get bought out by China too. But that is such a different thing from an organization disbanding. And that's why I have a ton of respect for Jacob Wolf. I totally believe that his sources are legitimate. I have no doubt whatsoever that he did his due diligence. I don't know why Reddit continues to doubt him for whatever reason. I guess it's just, reporting is bad. Trust me, the one time we ever tried to report anything, I've gotten more death threats in that 24 hours than you can imagine. I still have a couple of them saved on my phone. I will also share those with you in a Q&A if you guys would like to hear them sometime. But it's just the world of reporting and how it goes. He got the leak. His sources were good. I believe that all of that went according to plan. I wouldn't have published the story yet. I think you wait until after Worlds.
I disagree. I don't want to make it. I don't want to make the podcast about the ethics and whether or not he should have published it. He as a journalist has an obligation to report news and to report it in a timely manner. And if he doesn't publish it, he is risking that another journalist gets a hold of the story and they do publish it. So, he got a story. He followed through whatever their vetting process is at ESPN. Him and his editors both felt comfortable publishing it. They published the story. Rocks has every right to dispute it and to, disavow it, make whatever claims they want about the reality of it, whatever. I have no issue with him doing it now. It sucks that it is right before a key match for the Rocks Tigers in the World Championship. It sucks that it is a distraction to them, but at the same time, it's not his fault.
No, it's not his fault. And
that's
for the
his
record,
job.
if it's a distraction to Rocks Tigers, that's on them.
Well,
but
yes.
I just think that the problem with this is that even if all of his sources are perfect, things are going to change. Depending on how they do in this series, I think their feelings can change. And until anything is signed on the dotted line and they know for a fact, and maybe that has, and maybe we'll find out that this is all some elaborate ruse and whatever else. But I'm telling you right now, as someone who has coached players and whatever else, there is no way. It would be incredible to me that the org would not want to fight to defend their title if they were to win one. That's just something I cannot see happening. It is beyond my scope of human interaction. That's how I feel about it.
You gotta have money to run an org, and that is Rocks' biggest problem is they don't have money.
And if they can't get money after winning a world championship, Korea has bigger problems. Oh wait, they already do. The Pro League doesn't exist anymore in StarCraft.
It doesn't matter because they're not beating SKT.
Can you give me my moment about StarCraft? You just talked over it.
Take your 10 seconds about StarCraft.
Rest in pepperonis, Pro League. You are the best thing probably about esports in general, as far as just there being nothing more fun than like this roulette of, you have to beat our best and he keeps going until you beat him. And just the fun back and forth. It is a sign, 5 teams releasing their their players is a sign of just how much the StarCraft community has fallen in Korea. And if it's not successful in Korea, if the Western audiences are what's keeping StarCraft alive, we've got huge issues going forward. I am terrified for what happens to StarCraft next, mostly because I don't see any RTS game coming out that replaces it. No one's really making real-time strategies like StarCraft. And it's not like Blizzard's going to rush to make StarCraft 3 when Legacy of the Void just came out and is still making them bank. So I don't know. I'm sad about it, but it does speak to where Korea is. Maybe the financial problems are that bad for Rocks. We'll find out.
I just have one thing to say about StarCraft.
Sure.
Evolve or die. That's just what it comes down to, and I don't think StarCraft evolved into the modern
what do you call
esports
Legacy of
scene.
Void?
The gameplay absolutely has evolved. I don't think that the esport evolved to keep up with CSGO and League of Legends and Dota. That's what I think the problem is.
I don't know how you could. I mean, the problem is you look at the PC bangs, it's played by less than 1% of players in Korea.
But that's what it comes down to, is you either have to evolve and adapt or you die, and unfortunately that was what happened.
I'm writing an article about the problem of oversaturation within esports, and so I don't want to spoil too much of
here we go.
where that's going to go, because esports
Sneak
heaven
peek.
would be esports heaven would not like it if I sneaked out what my article is going to be before it comes out. But adapt or die only works when the market is at a point where you can allow for adaptation. There's nothing StarCraft realistically could have done to keep themselves alive in Korea. There's nothing that could be done. And remember, we're talking about Korea right now. It's not has nothing to do with Counter-Strike Global Offensive. It's League of Legends. It's Dota 2 growing. It's Heroes of the Storm growing in Korea, which people always underestimate. And Overwatch was the death knell. Overwatch killed any chance that it had left, because these games are all far more popular. But what can StarCraft do that could have made things different? I find it very hard to come up with things, because if you're talking about having bigger events, having more consistent events, quality of play, quality of the series, I can tell you it's as good as it's ever been. I've been watching it. But this is not a StarCraft podcast. This is a League of Legends podcast. I took my 10 seconds and gave it, 2 or 3 minutes.
Hey, that's fine.
I mean, it comes down to this overall idea of whether they're going to fall apart or not. And I'm not sure whether the organization will continue to exist. That's not on me to call. I think they want to go out with a bang, no matter what. And it's funny that they're going up against Bang, because it means I accidentally made a pun there.
Hey, Lamau.
But this series is not going to come down to, who has the best, who has the bigger story of who wants it more, right? SKT wants to be the 3-time world championship. Rocks Tigers wants to get that one last hurrah, or finally take the monkey off of their back that has been SKT. That will always, always, always be the case. So this is going to come down to who can execute the most perfectly. And Walter, when you look at these teams and how they play, what do you think these teams are going to attack? Like, how does each of these two teams try to exploit the holes? Because you've got to find them. Despite them both looking like near perfect teams right now, what do they try to do?
So here's the thing. Rocks Tigers needs to beat SK Telecom in about 35 minutes. They need to get out on top of them. They need to build a massive gold lead, and they just need to play their super aggressive early game style. The problem is that at every turn, SKT has proven that they can absorb all those punches. They can stall it out long enough that they are the more talented players in 2 key positions. They are more talented AD carry, and they have a more talented mid laner. That is a fact. That is outright a fact. You cannot argue that Prey is as good as Bang. It's not going to happen. You cannot argue.
I would also argue that individual talent is not what has ever decided a series
that
between
is
two
fine,
Koreans.
But the problem is that Rox relies on making plays in the early game, specifically through Peanut, to get them ahead. They rely on Smed making plays solo in his lane, which he could absolutely do against Duke. The problem is that when you have players that are as good as Faker and Bang, that are the best or best adjacent at their position, they can always make those plays themselves. And that has been something that happens to Rox, is when they are trying to make these early aggressive plays, Bang pulls off a miraculous 2v3 and gets first blood. Even though he dies, he gets the first blood and starts, there's no gold advantage. Faker makes a 1v1, or he makes some outrageous escape, and Blank or Bangi come in and get a kill. Like, they make those plays. SKT is somehow able to continuously weather this early game aggressive storm from the Tigers. And as we've seen throughout the course of their play over the last 2 years, they are the team that is just going to slowly drag out that game for 35 minutes and strangle the life out of you. And ROX Tigers does not do well against that. When the game starts to drag later and later, then they have to rely on a miracle 5-man Kennen ultimate from Smeb.
See, that's where I'm going to respectfully disagree. If you asked Korean experts what ROX did best at going into this tournament, they would have said late game team fighting. That's been their bread and butter, is that they can trust Smeb to initiate these team fights really well. Kuro and Prey do a really great job of cleaning up from the back. This is how, their coordination in those fights is what got them the championship this time around. Because Peanut has not always been the massive playmaker. And if you look at the group stage, their first 10 minutes were their weakest 10 minutes by far
that
in
is
every
true.
single one of those games.
That is true.
Now, here is the problem, is that it's very hard to be a team fighting team and play from a certain distance behind. You can give up a little bit, but you can't give up everything. And the problem for me with this series is I think that whether it's Faker, whether it's Bang, whether it's Blank, I think that they're going to try to snowball at least one of these 3 spots. And if they snowball these spots to the point where they make team fights incredibly difficult for ROX, it will take pitch perfect execution against a team that is just as intelligent as they are. And that's where I see ROX slipping up. I don't think it's going to be, if SKT drags it to the late game and they're even, I think ROX wins those games. I think that's exactly the way ROX wants to play. They want to make sure that Faker isn't snowballing the game. They want to make sure that Prey is keeping even so he still is able to fight from the back line in team fights. They trust Smeb's initiation and his teleport play because he is the best player in the top lane at doing those 2 things. That's how ROX wants to play. They're not going to want to play for the early game. The fact that Peanut's been doing better in the early game is an added bonus. It gives them a better chance to withstand what SKT is going to do, but I mean, in all reality, these are 2 teams that can team fight very well. SKT does it by methodically taking objectives, right? They take the dragons, they take the barons, they take everything. They leave you nothing on the map. They kill your farm, they kill your resources by knowing when to push and when to pull back and when to roam and backing at the exact right time. ROX struggles with that earlier on and then just gets smarter and smarter and knows how to pick fights, knows how to ward intelligently. I love the warding we see from Gorilla. I think he's one of the best at just, as a shot caller, at making sure that they have vision in the right places so that they're always able to come back in games. That's why they were able to keep that Albus Nox game going as long as they did with 2 different Baron steals because his warding was immaculate in that game. That's to me what this is going to come down to. Can SKT choke them out before they get to that team fight phase, or are the ROX Tigers going to get the engage that they want in that 30 to 40 minute mark that's going to turn the game around and allow them to snowball in their favor?
Just to touch on that point about objective control a little bit more. Dragon percentage, total dragon percentage, SK Telecom 73%, ROX Tigers 54%. First to kill 3 towers. So the first 3 towers, SK Telecom, 90% of their games, they kill the first 3 towers. ROX, 64%. Baron percentage is where ROX kind of catches up. ROX has 76% of Barons as opposed to SK Telecom, 67% of their Barons.
That's not a real difference given the sample.
Here's a massive difference to me. Jungle percentage. So the amount of jungle creeps that each team controls over the course of a game. SK Telecom, 57.8%. ROX Tigers, 52.4%.
57.8% is insane for the record.
For
those of you who haven't looked at jungle percentage over the course of a year,
incredible.
It's insane. That's a whole other level of just controlling the game. And honestly, it comes down to the fact that Blank and Faker have synergy now. Because that was what you were afraid you were going to have to sacrifice with Benki, is that Benki was going to be very supportive. He was going to have to give up some things in order to get the other guys going, but at least that synergy was there, and he knew how to fight the right way at the right times and really get those skirmishes going the way SKT wants to. But now that Blank looks like he's on the same page with the rest of the team, if he plays as well as he did against EDG, against Royal, that's going to be incredibly concerning for me, because if Peanut gets starved out of resources, they don't have the tools to stop any potential SKT snowball. They need Peanut to be on point. And, there are people saying after last week, well, Peanut might be the best jungler in the world. Well, okay, time to prove it, man.
And if
you're about to find out on the biggest stage of the tournament so far, Madison Square Garden, in front of all those screaming people, including you and I, you're going to have to prove that you are that best jungler, because otherwise Blank will be very happy to take every resource that you have and put you on the back edge, and it's going to be
I don't think this happens, but if SKT feel like they need a change of pace, they have Bengi. They have that 2-time world champion. They have that guy with experience. They have the Nunu player. They have that ability to just be like, all right, you know what? This super aggressive early game isn't working. Let's just go full turtle control mode and let's get Bengi in there. That is always a possibility. I don't think it'll happen because Blank played so exceptionally well against Royal Never Give Up. But you have to just realize that is in their pocket, that they can just bring out Bengi. So I think SKT has this series. I think they have it won. I say it's going to be. I say it's going to be a 3-2 because I think Rox Tigers are playing very, very well. And there will probably be a game where Smeb just absolutely smebs all over Duke's face, which is fine. It'll happen. But at the same time, I think that SKT is just a stronger team. I think their drafting historically and their preparation is just better. And although Nofe has looked like an exceptional coach over the course of this tournament, he doesn't quite have the experience that Kakoma does, and especially not in super high-pressure situations.
I am going to argue against that.
That is entirely fair.
I think Nofe has been the best drafter over the course of the whole year, just in terms of his consistency. We've seen SKT in the past. Look at Season 4, right? He has had, he's had problems at times being able to, properly, adjust to certain metas. The way he balanced SKTK and SKTS back in Season 4 notably ended up screwing over both teams as far as going to Worlds went. Nofe has never struggled to get these Rox Tigers going. They've always been one of the teams to most quickly adapt compared to other teams. Yes, they obviously, he is his coaching experience as, illustrious? No, but he's coached a team that made it to the finals in their first year and are now at the semifinals against the same team that they played.
Really? We want to talk about first years getting to finals?
Yeah.
SKT.
I mean, look. SKT.
Faker, SKT, Kakoma.
Regardless of whether they win this series or not, SKT are going to be the greatest organization that we have seen in League at the end of this year. It would take a lot to change that. I don't think a loss here would change that.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And, but I'm just saying, Nofe knows his stuff. And it's going to be a great coaching battle. I think it's going to be a great player battle. I think so much of it is going to come down to, these very little slip-ups in pick and ban, or these very little slip-ups in terms of playing the game, a ward in the wrong place, a snuck play. These teams know each other so well. And most of the time, SKT has had that edge. And so I understand why you'd have to give SKT that edge. And that brings us to our gambling lines, Walter. Where do you think the line was for this game?
I have SKT at -175.
Now, I would like to remind the people at home, I'm down 2 points.
Now he says that.
With 3 games to go, so I need all of these. I went SKT -130. And I'm a little mad about this line because neither one of us gets it because Rox is favored -125. So I have a question. Unicorn, friends, buddies, pals, I've worked with you for a long time. I have a lot of respect for you and your work and your formula and all of that. You had SKT as a higher team in the futures bets. Both teams went 3-1 last week. And of the two of them, What changed? What changed? Why in the world is this a Rocks Tigers line? This makes no sense to me. It's not like either
I
one
got
of them
it.
looked.
I know why.
You know why?
I know why. Not because anything play. This is a casino going, everyone's going to bet on Rocks because they're the underdog, because they have such a good story.
67% of bets are going to SKT.
That's because they have them as the underdog now.
I hate
This was
I hate-
preemptive. This was Rocks is going to kill the Bugaboo, so of course they're going to start them out lower. And it's awful. It's bad. It's not right. They shouldn't be the favorites in this at all by any stretch of the imagination. But I think I understand why they did it. I don't agree with it. It's wrong. It's bad. They should be shamed and marched through the streets of the capital to the red keep naked.
Oh my
But
god. Well,
I
what it
understand
means is
it.
that I now have to be perfect, and you can't tie me, or at any point. I can't even. This sucks. I mean, look, and the worst part is it's SKT minus 105, so it's not like you're getting value. There's no value to be had here. Stay away from this game, people. The only thing I would say, we talked about jungle control. First Dragon right now, they're both even odds at minus 112. We just spent a whole bunch of time explaining to you how dominant SKT has been in jungle objective control. Maybe that's worth something.
Rocks Tigers has a better first dragon rate at 64%, but SKT's is at 60.
Don't bet on this game. Just don't do it. If anything, plus 165 to go over 4.5 maps. That's the only bet you can feel good about, because at least then you're rooting for a 5-game series.
It's probably 5 games. I go for Silver Scrapes here. I'd like Silver Scrapes.
And for the record, I mean, we're gonna have to make a prediction. Are you picking SKT formally?
SKT 3-2. Yep.
I have Rocks 3-2. I think this is the time. I think they're finally there. I love the way they're playing right now.
Are you saying the time is up? The time is now?
Yeah, look. You can't see me. Well, you can see me. The stream isn't crashing. But, but I think that it's about time for Nofe and that company to really put it all together. I think they're playing as well as they ever have. And that's not to say that SKT is playing poorly. It's going to be one heck of a series. But I really love the way the Rocks Tigers plays. And I think the key is, do I believe that SKT are going to be able to snowball the game 3 times? Kuro plays safe enough. Prey plays safe enough. Blank really has to outplay Peanut. And right now, I love the way Peanut's playing. And look, I do not feel confident about that. I would never put money on it.
Faker. Faker, 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 faker. Faker, 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 Kuro, faker. Faker. My argument.
Yeah, look, I'm not.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my argument, my closing statement. I tip my hat to you. Faker.
I'm not disagreeing. There's a reason I would never. I'm never putting any money on it. I would never put money on it.
Faker.
Let's move on to the other series, which is a series. We have to talk about it.
I know. I can't wait
Galaxy
to talk about
versus
this
2K
series.
Gaming.
Oh boy, baby. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
Well, look, one of us has to be.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so Walter here.
Yeah,
I'm going to play the role of the skeptic. I know it's going to be hard for you to believe that I'm skeptical about H2K.
Heretic.
Just for devil's advocate, just for a second here.
Heretic.
Devil's advocate. What did you see in the H2K series that makes you think I could see them winning a best of 5 series against Samsung Galaxy the way they're playing right now? What are the things you point to as a European superfan?
They have now shown over the course of the tournament that all 4 of their carries can single-handedly carry a game. They have now proven that they're weak links. Vander is the weak link. I need to take Vander out of this discussion because he's a real wild card to me, where he can show up and he can play.
No, they played the wild cards last week, Walter.
I got you, but that. You get it. He's a real wild card where he can show up and he can be an Albus Nox Luna, or he shows up and he's Bangkok Titans, and you're like, oh, why did we invite you to the party? But they have shown over the course of the World Championship that all 4 of the other players can carry. Ottawamne was the question mark to me because he was not playing very well. Even going back to the playoffs, he wasn't playing very well. Groups, he was not playing very well. It was not of a guy that we were hearing, oh yeah, Ottawamne is like really good. Like he belongs in a discussion of like top laners in the world.
Apparently Koreans were, because apparently he did so well on scrims. I came out of nowhere for us too.
And then he styles, and granted it's Smurf, it's an LCL player, like whatever, but like just crushes him. It wasn't like, oh yeah, like Smurf made a mistake. It was, no, Ottawamne's just like, I'm going to solo kill you 30 times over 3 games, just so you're aware of that. And yeah, you can keep giving me Jace. I'm okay with that. Like, he was phenomenal.
It would have been nice to see his champion pool tested a little bit more than it was. But I'll say this, people give Mouse a lot of crap, but he did outplay Mouse just as much in that second week. He managed to play very well against Ziv, who I think is one of the 5 best top laners in the world. I think that he has more than proven his own in this tournament. And this is one of those things where, funnily enough, I'll turn to Thorin, and Thorin has been saying that he could be that guy for forever. That's his that's been his thing, right? Is that, it's Ottawamne has that potential, but he doesn't do it on the big stage. He just comes up a bit short. It's why H2K doesn't make it to these European finals. It's why, they fumbled at Worlds, and it was all set after that 1 and 2 week to do exactly that. And they proved me wrong. And I'm happy to say they proved me wrong. It's more fun that they proved me wrong, because now I get to look at Prawley, my Georgia boy, ATL, peace up, A-Town down. Got to talk to him about barbecue if I get any chance to see him this weekend. But he has proven that he is a very intelligent coach, that he knows how to game plan very well, that he knows how to adjust to other teams. The adjustments they made between week 1 and week 2 were incredibly impressive. I have no doubt that they've taken a look at Samsung Galaxy and watched the film and tried to come up with what their game plan is going to be. I have no doubt that they know what their strengths are and how they plan to play around that. I think they're going to be as ready as they can be. But the looming sword of Damocles that hangs over this team is their mid game, is closing out games. Even when they had 8 to 10K gold leads against Albus Nox Luna, there were missteps in closing out games in both Game 1 and Game 3. And this is something where they often looked, especially you look at their game against AHQ, they looked like they didn't quite know how to close out a game there. They certainly have had a lot of games where it felt like they should have been way more decisive given how good they've been in laning. For the record, no one is happier than me than my boy Yankos from my old Roccat days. Rest in pepperonis, Roccat. At least you still exist as a team, unlike my CJ Antis guys. But, I love seeing him play well. I love seeing him be the first Blood King, but none of that's translating into mid-game success. And Samsung has been so good at rotations. How do H2K shore up that hole, or is that a hole that, you can't fix in a week?
So I think part of this is going to be that H2K is just going to have to try and extend the laning phase as long as they possibly can, which was kind of their MO in that second week of group stages, and then even going into this match, this quarterfinal series that was against Albus Nox Luna. They're just very comfortable saying, okay, we'll have a 25-minute laning phase. We don't care. And they're going to build and they're going to chip away at your towers, and they're going to build these massive CS and these massive gold differential leads just through their sheer laning talent. When all 3 of these players, Ryu, Forgiven, and Ottawamne, are at their best, laning-wise, they can compete with anyone in the world. I think Ryu can compete with Faker if you just talk about pure laning mechanics. I think that is absolutely true. I think Forgiven can match up, and did match up against the number 180 carry in the world in Deft. On 3 occasions, he did very well into him. I don't think that is an issue, and you're right, it is going to be the mid game. So I think their goal, their strategy is going to be minimize that mid game time. Minimize that amount of rotational play. It's going to turn into all right, we're going to do 1-4, or we're going to just keep clumping up, and we're just going to keep sending people to, all right, push that lane out. All right, now push this lane out. Okay, push that lane out. And maybe they'll probably play Caitlyn at some point, so we'll have this, power trough that Caitlyn sits in. You
I
know,
would be
all these
surprised
types
if
of
they give him
things.
Caitlyn. He's the
Fine,
best Caitlyn in the world.
fine,
There's no reason to.
but all champions have some sort of power trough, and H2K is really smart at identifying when that power trough is and going, okay, we can't aggress. We're just going to sit back on our heels. These games, I think, are going to be exceptionally long games. I think these games, unless Samsung just completely rolls over them in the first 20 minutes and builds a massive gold lead and just kills them, these are going to probably be 45 to 50-minute games just because of H2K's desire to extend that lane phase as long as they can until they get to the point where one fight can win you so much. And I think that's going to be H2K's path to victory against Samsung. On the other hand, Samsung's path to victory is going to be rotate on them. Move on them. You know that they're just going to try and set up all this wave clear duty. So figure out, okay, try and get these towers down as early as possible so you can open up their jungle, so you can get all this vision in there. Try and get onto the Tahm Kench so you can pick people off. I think Samsung is really going to rely on pick compositions as opposed to anything else, and H2K are really going to hang their hat on these kind of siege team fight style compositions.
And this is where I both agree and disagree to a certain extent. On the one hand, I agree wholeheartedly that, this is an H2K team that's going to want to extend the landing phase as long as possible. You say that they know when to pick fights and when not to. Game 3 against Albus Nox Luna would love to disagree with you on that. They have had problems picking fights that they really didn't need to try to force, whatever they believe their next objective is, usually Baron. They spend a lot of time trying to force fights that will allow them to grab Barons, and that's something that you cannot afford to do against Samsung Galaxy. That's not going to be acceptable. And the other problem is I don't like this idea of, well, if we just get to this late game team fight, then we'll outplay Samsung Galaxy, because Samsung Galaxy's been really good at late game team fights. Crown scales super well. Ruler's been really good at being a backline team fighter. Core JJ is really good at setting these initiation setup. And in all reality, you look at, okay, well, then just snowball the early game. Ambition's been one of the best 3 junglers at this tournament. I don't know whether that's going to last. As a CJ Entus fan, it makes me sad inside that I have to say that, because I have to watch him do it for a completely different org. But, I mean, the guy's really, really good at setting up plays. And I don't think they're just going to sit there and just let H2K.
Jankos has been, a top 4 jungler at this tournament?
No. I put them very close to each other. I think Jankos is playing out of his mind, which is wonderful to see. Mm-hmm. But my point is, if you think that they're going to sit back and let H2K extend the laning phase as long as they want, that's not how Ambition plays. That's not how Ambition plays. That's not how QV plays. That's not how Core JJ with his roaming support picks plays. That ain't going to happen. So you're going to have to find a way to close some of these mid-game fights and pick the right skirmishes, because otherwise Samsung will skirmish you, and you do not want to let Samsung dictate the pace of the game. That is how H2K
That's true. That's very true. Now,
granted, there's an argument, and it will happen at least once. It will happen at least once that H2K just snowballs the early game. Forgiven gets a first blood or 2. Jankos really gets going, and QV gets put down on a champion that he can't easily scale back from. And it's just too much of a deficit for Samsung to overcome. I can see that happening once. But you got to do it 3 times in a 5-game series. And I believe that the talent that is on Samsung is not – this isn't like Albus Nox where they're going to be able to bully these people over. And it's not like they're playing EDG or AHQ, both of which had really glaring weak points. With EDG, just attack the top lane. With AHQ, you looked at that roster and you said, well, Westdoor is just a gaping hole of suckingness, and they're not going to play Chawi because they hate all of their fans. So we can just attack that mid lane, attack Mountain because Mountain's not aggressive enough. Those are glowing weak points. I don't know what Samsung's glowing weak point is. There are places in which I think H2K can match up very well and even surpass in the right situation, but not to the extent that they have done in the victories that we've seen so far. I don't see those kinds of gold leads happening again. At the very least, it would require huge drop-offs from the Samsung that we saw just 3-0 Cloud9 like they didn't exist.
Would require massive drop-off from the H2K we saw 3-0 Albus Nox Luna like they didn't exist.
Yeah, well, Albus Nox Luna is not Cloud9. If you put Cloud9 and Albus Nox Luna best of 5 series, I don't think Albus Nox Luna wins. It's a great story. They battled out of the group stage. I'm glad they did it. But we cannot sit here and pretend that those are equal opponents. In a best of 5 situation, There's no wild card that has ever come close to prepping the way that all these power regions who get to play best of fives way more often can do. The infrastructure is just not there. I mean, that's why I broke down Liquid's post so thoroughly in the first part of this podcast, is because it showed clear, evident flaws in the way that they approached the pick and ban phase and prepping for these kinds of opponents. And Samsung ain't making those mistakes. That's just not going to happen. This is an organization that won Worlds 2 years ago and has most of those same people intact and making decisions. If that's what you're counting on, good luck. I mean,
it's not the same roster. It really irks me when people bring up the Samsung won Worlds 2 years ago. There's not a single player on this team that is still there.
The coaches are the same.
Oh my god.
The coaches matter.
Coaches do not have such
Korea,
a massive impact once the game is on the Rift. They don't.
They matter. Coma matters. No fame matters.
They matter, but once they get on the Rift, a coach can... You know this. Once your players are on the Rift, all a coach can do is sit back and pray that their players listen to them and accepted their lessons and actually put those into effect. That's all you can do.
That's absolutely true.
And Prawley has shown that he has a mastery of controlling what of going after what the opponent's weakness is in the pick ban phase and adapting over the course of a best of series. He has proven that as well as himself. Maybe not to a world championship extent like the Samsung coaches have, but he has also proven that he can adapt on the go in a best of tournament.
And Samsung has pulled the same 7 wins in a row that H2K have, except they did it in Group D, which was the group that everyone said was the group of death. They beat up on TSM.
7 wins is 7 wins.
They beat up on... That's not true.
7 wins is 7 wins.
If you beat Phoenix 1 7 times, that's not the same as beating TSM 7 times. That's
in a win streak, it's still 7 wins. 2 of those games were Splice.
I'm 2 of the 7 wins.
Yeah.
No, it was Royal Never Give Up twice. Splice once. There was the game in between where they lost to TSM. The Splice.
Oh, okay, I got you.
I'm not including that one.
That's
that's beating Royal Never Give Up twice, a team that made it to the semifinals. It's beating TSM twice and stomping. Beating TSM once and stomping them the second time around. And it's a 3-0 stomp, and it was an absolute stomp against Cloud9.
And H2K was stomping EDG twice, was stomping AHQ once, was stomping INTZ, which I guess was not a great... It doesn't point anything. And stomping Albus Nox Luna 3 times.
Yeah. If you compare the strength of schedule there, if this was college football and we had the BCS rankings, you would not have the quality of victory anywhere near the same. And that's fine.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's just... Look, and that's not a criticism of H2K. They can only beat the team in front of them. But the way they've beaten teams is they've exploited these weaknesses that I don't see on this Samsung roster the way they're playing right now. There is not one person that they can target the way they have been able to target EDG. Or you're going to target Core JJ? You think Core JJ is the weakest player on this team?
If you want to know who the weakest player on that team is, it's Core JJ.
Oh, I disagree with you so strongly there.
I think that bot lane is their weak point. I think that's where you go after. You know Ambition's going to go down there because Forgiven is going to bully Ruler in lane, so Jankos can either go down there and just fight 3v3, which is what H2K has done all the way back to the playoffs in Europe, or he goes and gets his other lanes ahead because Cuvée and Crown, I think, are even matchups for Ottawamne and for Ryu. So you could tilt one of those in your favor. I don't think this is as clean a victory as you're professing Samsung to have.
I think individually H2K matches up. I think on a macro level they don't. I haven't seen that. I've seen them snowball wins because they take those micro advantages, but I don't think Samsung is going to give up so many micro advantages. And I think the macro play has been incredibly decisive.
Okay.
And that's just not been.
We get to see it live.
We do. And where do you think the line is, Walter?
Well,
it's time.
I have.
Because I would like to point out, despite everything you just said, you actually had less faith in H2K.
I have Samsung at minus 333.
Yeah. I had Samsung at minus 320. And I would like to congratulate you, Walter, for winning the Guess the Lines World Championship. It's your second win out of 6. You've won both World Championships, though, so I guess those count double. So let's say we're even. I don't know what it is about Worlds. It always throws me off. I had two bad weeks and that 2 bad days, I should say, where I got like 5-1 and 6-0'd, and those killed me. And you know what? I accept that. I accept the punishment that you still haven't figured out what it's going to be.
I know.
The actual line, Samsung minus 476.
Okay. I was going to go even higher.
H2K at plus 320. And by the way, I think that's a fair line. I understand that there's a lot that's going for H2K, but you know what? We made a lot of the same arguments for Orihen and Fnatic last year, and they both got 3-0'd. That's just how this goes. There's something about, the way Koreans play the macro game versus the way Europeans play the macro game. There are flaws within the European meta. And remember that we're only a week ago on the podcast talking about how Europe as a region is just, how did we forget that they just weren't very good because we brought it up at the beginning of the season. And H2K has surpassed their region. They have done better than anyone could have expected. They should be incredibly proud of their run when it ends this week.
H2K 3-2. God-given, boys.
I mean, I knew that you were going
H2K
to
3-2. It's gonna happen.
I knew you were going to give H2K at least 2 wins. I did not realize you were going to give them the series.
H2K 3-2.
I have Samsung 3.
Ryu versus Faker finals. Forgiven slays the god. He then becomes Constantinus Forgiven Godslayer, however you pronounce his last name.
He's already got Napoleon in his name. He really doesn't need the extra nicknames.
He does need the extra nickname. He's gonna change his name from Forgiven to Godslayer. That is what his new IGN will be. It'll be known as Godslayer.
It'll be something, that's for sure.
And then they'll cut off one of his hands. They'll replace it with a golden one. And
I think it's much more likely we see a 3-0 than we see a 3-2 victory for H2K. I think the Samsung team's really, really good. And I think that what H2K does best is something they can't do in this series. And it's not their fault that they can't do it. They're not built to do it. That's not how they've won games so far. And if they prove me wrong, no one will be happier to come back on this podcast and admit I was wrong. I was very happy this week to say it. I'm glad that they 3-0'd because it was the decisive victory that makes me say that they're going to take a game against Samsung. And I do think they take a game. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a lot closer than any of the quarterfinal series we saw. I think that this is a better opponent for them than EDG or Royal Never Give Up were for the other Korean teams. I just think Samsung's really, really good. And they're playing right now the best that they've ever played. And this meta works so well for what they do. So we'll find out. Those are our picks. We're going to wrap up the actual podcast section here. So just quick, for those of you who want to... Oh, yeah, shout out to Rastapuppy reminding you that last year's Ryu versus Faker did not go very well.
This is a better H2K team. This is a way better H2K team. He doesn't have to deal with Lulex as a
there's
jungler.
no Lulex. That is a huge advantage.
Oh, embarrassing. Just embarrassing. Embarrassing. Much like Chase losing to me in the Guess the Lines challenge. Now I have to come up with something good.
Yeah, you guys can let him know. You should message him at where can the people at home find you, Walter?
You guys can find me at C80s_LOL. I will now spend the entire day at work tomorrow and my bus ride to New York coming up with how I shall punish you. Maybe we'll do it in New York and I'll videotape it. We'll put it up on the YouTube.
Yeah, you can make me take some terrible shot with like some crazy hot peppers or whatever in there. He'll come up with something, I'm sure. I am at Redshirt King. You can follow the podcast at Rough Drafts Pod. That's where the good news about all of our stuff, including when we are going to be streaming these kind of things. So you should definitely make sure to do that. You can also follow the stream itself, twitch.tv/Rough Drafts Podcast. That way you'll know whenever we go live. You get those nice little messages in your inbox, and you can come and join the show. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. It was really great to have you guys. We love interacting with the crowd, and we're going to continue to do that on the Q&A. Really quick, also, soundcloud.com/esports rough drafts or iTunes Rough Drafts Podcast. That's where you find the audio-only versions of this. We are going to move on to the Q&A section, but for those of you listening at home, goodbye, Internet.